All right. Good morning, Mimi. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Kofi. I'm great.
Oh,
Good to
lovely to hear
be
that.
online with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And as ever, I find our conversations uplifting and inspirational. So I'm excited to just have a relaxed conversation that hopefully will give people food for thought and things to take away. So
Yeah.
um, before I start,
Mhm.
I would love to do an introduction to your good self. It may sound a bit weird because it'd be a bit third person-ish, but
Okay,
afterwards you give me a thumbs up in the middle or thumbs down as to whether or not I'm on the right track. Is that all right?
that's fine.
Awesome. So for everyone that's joined us today, thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back to Coffee with Kofi. Today, I'm joined by someone who's dedicated her career to guiding people through one of the most important journeys of their lives, their financial one. Mimi Gom is a financial advisor at Lucerna Wealth, senior partner practice, get my words out, of St. James's Place Wealth Management, with experience spanning private banking, wealth management, and holistic financial planning. She has built a reputation for helping individuals and families understand, protect, and grow their wealth with clarity and confidence. In this conversation, we will explore Mimi's path into financial advisory, the values that shape her client relationships, and the mindset shifts that lead to long term financial well being. So, if you're looking to build stability, make smarter decisions, or simply feel more empowered about money, Mimi brings wisdom that you want to lean into. So, I would say grab your coffee if you're tuning in. I have mine right here.
Mine too.
Brilliant. And let's sip into that inspiration. A bit cheesy, I know, but I have to do it. So, Mimi, thank you so much for joining. Where are we? Thumbs up, middle, down in terms of accuracy.
Wow, definitely thumbs up. That
Yeah.
was impressive.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
No, brilliant. Well, you are impressive, and so it makes it really it makes it easy. I'm glad that the facts are facting, and we can start. So, as always, I love to get people context of who it is that I'm speaking to, and these conversations are really hearing the journeys of leaders from all over the world, wherever they're based, on what is meaningful and purposeful for them, but that others can authentically take something from.
Mhm.
And I'm nosy. I'm nosy. Anyone that's listened to these before knows I'm nosy. So I would love to know a bit about your backstory. So that's really around sort of where, to whom you were born and raised, essentially. And then we can get into some of the juicier stuff around that.
Yeah, sure. So I listened to one or two of these and I thought, boy. But my backstory is I am, for my sins, born Nigeria.
Okay.
Born in not Lagos or Abuja or the major cities that most people would associate with Nigeria, but a small city called Makurdi, the capital
Okay.
of Benue State. And my parents moved to Lagos for their work, and so as a young child, I spent some of my formative years in Lagos.
Hmm.
Uh, Left Lagos for Nairobi again due to parents' work,
Okay.
and spent the next 10 plus years in Nairobi doing my high school, primary school and had the opportunity to leave to study abroad in
Hmm.
Canada. At the
Oh,
time, everybody in my friendship circle was applying for scholarships and universities abroad and to the US, into Australia, the UK, and Canada. And for some reason, I found Canada appealing. I thought a bilingual country, not as radical necessarily as the US. And my first 2 weeks in Canada, 9/11 happened. Um, and I was glad to be in that hemisphere in terms of being in Canada as opposed to being in the US. And enjoyed my university there. Really diverse campus, really broad-minded individuals. Um, I enjoyed Canada as a country. What I did not enjoy was the cold. Yeah,
hmm.
did not enjoy the cold, and went with an undeclared major, sort of, wanted a broad liberal arts education, but got drawn into economics, management economics specifically, and international development. And my
Hmm.
mindset was one day I'll work for an international organization like the UN dealing with
Yeah.
economic empowerment, right? Economic empowerment for nations and nations and ethnicities, and just that was my dream, you know.
Okay.
Um, and then got enrolled into a master's
Hmm.
in Canada at the time, but decided to apply to a school that a family friend who was visiting mentioned, an LSE, and I thought, it sounds interesting. I probably wouldn't get in, but I got in.
Oh,
I
well
got in.
done.
And then was then told you have to go, and so left my Canadian master's offer on the table and moved to London, thinking I would just be here for a year. And fast forward 20 years later, I am now British, British
Amazing.
Nigerian, and it's been over 10 years since I left Canada and like last visited Canada, 2 decades since I graduated, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But that's my backstory, in broad.
That is brilliant. So I don't know how you've done it, but 4 countries in pretty much 4 minutes, from Nigeria, so West Africa, moving to East Africa, heading over to Canada, and then making your way to the UK. I mean, if that doesn't make you a candidate for International Woman of the Year, I don't know what does. But whereabouts in Canada did you study?
So just outside Toronto, a small university, well, not that small, but University of Guelph,
Okay.
Ontario, and they offered me a scholarship, so I took it. And I actually enjoyed studying there. It's a very small town, like 100,000 people. My mom would say, that's like Oshodi, which is like this massive transport terminal in Lagos. So
Mm,
she's like, it's small enough, and I thought, okay. So I would head over an hour 20 minutes drive most to visit my cousins in Toronto.
mm,
And so they were like my second family whilst I studied in Guelph. And yeah, it was very soft landing for me. I'm not going to lie, because um, formative years, I was in boarding school for part of secondary.
mm,
And so I was used to sort of being on my own from
mm,
the age of 11. And so when I got to university in Canada, I was 17. And this is
mm,
even after taking 8 months off. So I started off in the international house accommodation. My parents had the resources with the support of the United Nations to fund part of the education and part of my living costs. So I know that is a super soft landing compared to
mm,
stories. But I started off in the international house as well. And so I applied, you had to apply for that accommodation, and I wrote a personal statement that gave me access. And there were about 60 of us in that house, and all very like civic minded individuals, volunteering in different ways. My first semester, we did something called World on a Plate. And
okay.
so each room would convert into, so there are like 15 rooms on the ground, 15 rooms on the top, and you would convert it into a particular cuisine, a particular part of the world. And my partner and I, for some reason, did Poland, and we did like pierogies, and you know,
Oh,
uh,
okay. What's with that? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I came into a very, very, I'd say, like welcoming university atmosphere and climate where people were already thinking in a broad-minded way, and so it was a mild culture shock. But I'd say culture shock came later when you realize
Mm,
the rest of the campus and or the rest of Canadian society is not necessarily like that. But because
mm,
it's a country that consists of a lot of second and third generation people who can trace their roots, at the time it was just such a warm, inclusive place. Um,
mm,
and it was also the first place that I also realized, oh yeah, from going from a Black majority country to where, I was a minority, started, you know, especially in my second year, getting more involved in, what it means to be a minority in
mm.
a society like Canada. But yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Yeah. What a brilliant story. And so I think I read somewhere once upon a time that luck happens when preparation meets opportunity. And I know that you talked about your parents having the resources, etc. But the fact you got a scholarship suggests to me that you were prepared for that opportunity, and then you took it with both hands. And what I love, 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 and why I didn't get an invitation, I don't know, is the fact that different cultures were celebrated in that celebration of food, which is probably one of the most bonding things across all cultures. And for the sake of keeping our friendship cordial, we could talk about jollof rice, but we could,
Listen,
but we don't need to. We don't need to, because you and I, we know how it is. We could talk about, gusi and abag, pierogi you mentioned as well, and different nations' cuisine. But I think breaking bread and sharing different
yeah,
people's international dishes is really a form of bonding, and a glue that reminds us that, yes, different flavors and ingredients, but that
yeah.
enjoyment comes from the fellowship of food is something that is probably quite universal in my view.
Definitely, breaking bread is key. They say way to a person's heart is through, their stomach. In my case, that was true. So if you know how to cook, But funnily enough, like I love I love Ghana jollof. I love Nigerian jollof. There doesn't have to be a competition, at
No,
all, at all.
no,
And
no.
it's yeah. I'm
I'm
like,
we- I'm with you. I'm super inclusive. And I don't want to derail this, because in a minute, people will be coming and saying, how can you not defend your mother's own cooking? And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. So
listen,
let me
I'll give you a small anecdote and maybe share the link later. One of my mentors in university was a lady called Adra Bado. And
yeah,
she, shout out to her. She was a medically trained doctor, but in moving to Canada, her licenses didn't convert.
right.
And her and her husband ran like a dance school. They taught African dance. She did storytelling. She published books, and she came to national acclaim doing these things. And she has a song about Auntie's jollof rice, and she's Ghanaian. So obviously, you know how that song is gonna flow, but it's somewhere on YouTube. I'll share the link. It'll make you laugh.
Oh, please,
Yeah.
please.
But I personally, my favorite like food from Ghana, I'd say you're gonna laugh as well, is red.
Oh, really? The beans with the plantain?
So good. Red is
Yeah.
good.
I'm 100%, on the inclusive vibe. And I think the diversity really is the spice of life. So,
It is.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I only ever eat my mom's Ghanaian food. It's not the case. But I love to try different foods and different cultures. And this is why I love doing this, because these are not the questions that I had in mind to ask you. But again, knowing you as long as I've known you, and I didn't know all of these things, and now I think it gives people a firm footing on which we can now build and talk about,
Yeah.
you, and in particular, I guess, origins and early spark. So from LSE is no mean feat to get into there and do, the, I believe, local economic development masters you did there.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what originally drew you into the world of finance, and I suppose what has kept you committed
Mhm.
to as your ongoing career?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Like when I was younger, I mean, they say readers are leaders. I was a voracious reader. I loved reading. In fact, I wish I had access to so many more books as a child to frame my mindset. And I also had parents who worked in the international governmental space. So some of the debates in the household were quite interesting.
Mm,
And I thought that access to capital was the limiting factor growing up. So around 16, I thought access to capital is a limiting factor, and being able to understand flows of capital would enable me to have more impact.
mm,
And it was, I don't know if I have that same mindset now,
mm,
but it was one of the drivers for me switching into economics. Um, and and I had the opportunity to do that double major in management economics and local international development in undergrad, local economic development in grad school. And it was interesting because initially my mindset was, development organization. But when I got to London, the local economic development course was a geography and environment led course. And it was very Eurocentric, but it looked at things like creative clusters, competitive clusters. And my thesis was on what was then called the Millennium Dome and cultural creation of cultural quarters for economic growth. Yeah. And I looked at the Bilbao Museum in Spain as a case study and looked at what was then the Millennium Dome and positioned it as a potential driver for growth. Because I've always been a very creative person. I love music, I love art, but I didn't study those things. And so whilst I was doing my master's at LSE and trying to marry those two worlds and think about life post LSE and going into development, a friend of mine said, Mimi, why don't you apply for investment banking? And I was like, not really something I would have considered.
Sure.
Then I was speaking to my parents, specifically my dad, and I said, yeah, this friend of mine was telling me to apply for this thing. My dad said, why don't you apply? Like, you have nothing to lose. And it was specifically an internship program run by SEO London. So investment banking was not something that had been in my worldview or perspective previously. In fact, I had quite a negative attitude to it. My professor one of my economics professors in Canada, when I told him I was coming to London to study, he's like, oh yeah, London, they think they're like the second, he was a French professor, you think they're like the second Wall Street with their big swinging. I'm not going to finish that sentence.
Yeah.
He was not like a fan. He's like, London was good when it was affordable in the 80s and 90s. Now it's just not nice. And this was him saying this 20 years ago. I still came despite his disparaging comments. But I did remember that comment. And I thought, investment banking, aren't they pretty cutthroat? Like, I'm not sure if, I know people make a lot of money, but will I ever fit in that kind of arena? And my dad said, you don't know if you don't try. It's an internship. At the end of the day, you might like it. And then if you don't, it's just 12 weeks of your life. So I applied thinking again, yeah, I'm not going to get this. It's just, but out of the mouth of two witnesses. And so I said, okay, I'll apply. And so applied. To my surprise, got invited for an interview. To my surprise, I got the offer. And then started my 12-week internship, and it blew me away. It really expanded my worldview. Like, I thought, wow, this marries so much of what I'm interested in, economics, politics, and such dynamic group of people. And I started my internship in an organization that no longer exists.
Okay.
Lehman Brothers.
Yep.
And, it was just really, like, for me, fascinating. This is not just boring numbers. This is really, I've said access to capital is a limiting factor. And I feel like God has brought me into this space where I can see how things work. And so it was challenging, and it did get me thinking, you know what, I do want to work in this arena, maybe not investment banking, but I do want to be in financial services. And then I do want to stay in a city like London, because initially I thought I would just be here for a year, 2 years, finish my master's and head back to Kenya or Nigeria. But when I started working in that arena, and I won't lie, the money was nice. Yeah. And I thought, you know what, this is something that I see myself, doing and being good at. But during the internship, you got to explore different spheres of investment banking, from capital markets, etc. And I found myself drawn to wealth management.
Got you.
I found myself drawn to wealth management because I love people, I love stories. I started off in the transitions management team in my internship, which is looking at large institutions and how they move pensions.
Yeah.
And now I help advise individuals on how they manage their personal pensions and other investments. And so for me, when I started off in the transition management team, it was an interesting experience. And then the real estate management team was the secondary team. But I kept talking to individuals in the wealth management team, and I thought, this is actually where I want to be. I want to do wealth management. I think it marries my interest in the personal and people's stories alongside the markets. And I love to serve people. And so I think this is a good way of doing that. And so when I finished the internship, I actually only applied for wealth management in HSBC, Barclays. Who else did I interview with? UBS. And you know, I got accepted by Barclays and I haven't looked back, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's where the pivot happened in terms of you don't know what you don't know. And this is before YouTube, this is before all of the influencers who will be giving you 100 tips,
Yeah.
things that at the click of a button with Chat GPT now we have like ready. And so doing an internship with an organization like SEO London that showed us the width and breadth of investment banking and professional services was again another soft landing, another super supportive place to gain perspective.
Yeah, I think this is uh, powerful in a number of ways because it reminds me a little bit of my children's coloring books of old when they used to do these things where you have the outline. And I would say the outline in your case is, broad view on the sorts of things that would be of interest to you. And then it gets colored in with experiences, conversations with others that lead you to then form a fuller picture,
Yeah,
in terms of what kind of aligns with the North Star that you have at the time, but then gets modified along the way because your worldview, as you put it, it becomes expanded through, I'd say, trial and error, but I suppose in yours, I wouldn't say it was error, it was more, exploration, really,
yeah,
as you explored things and you found out more about them, it was not so much that, oh, more of this, can I hear more? Actually, yes, this is where I want to be. So the overarching outline kind of remains the same in terms of your key values and things you want to be involved in, but how that picture eventually unfolds, the way you sort of explain it to me makes it yeah, makes it quite appealing, especially without influences and so much information now. It sounds like you listened to yourself and just went into these things with an open mind and then found your way that way. Does that sound about right to you?
yeah, that sounds right. And but there was still a lot of like, you know, self-doubt, I guess what people call imposter syndrome, along
Mm,
that journey. Um, for different reasons,
yeah.
once I got into like the internship and saw like, hey, things are super competitive. Did they pick me by mistake? Like, like what is this? And that sense of, am I good enough to be here? Have I performed?
Mm,
You know, um, and and I'd say the first week, my ego really took a knock, you know, um, and it it was not comfortable. Learning is
mm,
not comfortable experience, and you know, I didn't allow it to keep me down though, because I realized, wow, Mimi, you're not you're not the business. Like there are people here who have done so much,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and you know, like Trump and his, sorry to bring up his name,
mm,
people who are so anti DNI, you know, uh, sometimes that self doubt would creep in. Like, am I here just to be nominal? Are they here just to
yeah,
fill a quota? But it led to two things within me. So, like, after that first week of sort of self doubt and questioning, I'm like, well, you're here, so you better make the most of it.
okay,
You're here, so you better make the most of it, and you better make sure that you get the best that you can out of this experience, and you put in your best.
mm,
You can't sit, and sometimes, self talk is so key. And there's so many voices, and I'd reach out to say my parents, my pastor, and just say, gosh, I'm really questioning myself and whether this is the right place. Like, am I good enough? And they'd say, on what green earth? Like, God has placed you there, so make the most of it and
yeah,
do your best, and don't beat yourself up. Nobody's meant to be perfect, because the first couple of weeks you do make mistakes, right?
yeah, of
um
course.
and SEO does teach you that in those first 2 weeks, ask all the questions, make all the mistakes, be the novice. And I think so many people are afraid to be the novice,
Yeah,
be the new person, and it takes a level of humility. And so that really taught me those first couple of weeks, such that in my future, sort of every time I come into a new space opportunity, I think this is the time to ask all the questions, be the novice, don't be afraid to show that you don't know all the answers. Even in this my late stage of life, I think
Yeah,
I'm open to
later.
learn.
Later. Well, that is so important. I love the way that you're honest and vulnerable about what many of us struggle with, which is the humility and the dislike of growing. We're such confusing creatures because on the one hand, we want to be comfortable, and on the other hand, when we're comfortable for too long, we start to get down and despondent about where our life is going. And I think if you can create these mental models that help you push through it, like yours, which I love, which is when I'm here. So I may as well dance. It very much reminds me of days at university when leaving London, going to the Midlands, and they'd play some music which was not what I would consider. It was just not workable. But to your point, I was there and I was like, I'm not going to spend 3 years on the sidelines, so I may as well dance. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that will be that's something that is a good reminder for me and hopefully others. So when you touched on this, and I really want to build on this idea about the early career and identity piece, and the financial sector hasn't always been known for diversity or inclusion. And as a woman of color entering this space, I guess I really want to build on how what tools you use to form part of your support network. I guess beyond speaking to your family and your pastor, were there any other tools that you were able to access to just give you the stickiness to just stay with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of my I think understanding my motivations, understanding my why, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, when I left Lehman Brothers and took on the Barclays offer, I actually had like a year in between to explore other interests and to build on my faith, I guess, so to speak. And I worked briefly in the charity sector,
Okay.
whilst I was waiting to fully start at Barclays. And one of the things that, as a young pastor, human beings, that I found a powerful tool was prayer. I'm going to be candid about that. Prayer, and then journaling. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of internal reflective tools, and then in terms of external tools, I think the power of your peer network um, is so key. So like reaching out to peers where relevant, sharing experiences, friends, but also mentors.
Okay.
I was privileged to mentors or sponsors, as the case may be. I was privileged to have one or two people who took a keen interest in my career. And thankfully, I was humble enough to accept that mentorship or sponsorship before it was formally labeled as such. So those were key tools that helped me. Um, and I think, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing in that piece. Um, it's more a mindset shift as well,
Mm-hmm.
because the journaling helped me identify some of the lies I was telling myself. You know,
Oh, yeah.
so the lies I was telling myself, because like perception is not always reality.
No.
Um, and so being able to separate the the chaff and the wheat and being able to tackle things with clarity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I find that if you isolate yourself too much, you can, fall, so to speak. But I held up the mirror of supportive friends and family, to stay strong. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Great tool.
yeah.
Really great tools. Really great tools. And again, vulnerable, but also honest insofar as the lies that but I think so many of us tell ourselves, and if there was more time, I would definitely share and go into some of the lies that I've told myself. And I think until you lean into those more broadly, you
Mm,
can't really shine a light on the shadows that pull you back, because you will sort of move with a momentum that's not really authentic, because it's not truly, what people see is not really who you are. So no, good that you picked that up, and again, useful tips. And I wanted to talk to you about I guess representation and impact. I know you've got long tenure in the game now, and for me, I still say that representation matters, because seeing is believing, hearing is believing. It's part of why I love doing what I do with this, to inspire people to think, well, if Mimi can do it, then maybe I could do it, or maybe I could do it my own way, or maybe I could do something completely different, but just following some of the steps. But the question really is, what impact do you think it has on clients, especially your female clients and people of color, to see someone like you advising them on their financial future?
Ooh, I have a mixed answer to this. Um, it can be really positive, and it has been really positive. And I have people who seek me out deliberately. They're like, yes, I've been looking for a woman. I've been looking, and it helps. 90% of the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 90% of the time, and I'll focus on the 90% where it is positive. And there's a sense of compassion, care, ethos, that comes into conversations where I don't know, they're able to feel that I relate,
Yeah.
to their experience, and so there's a level of comfort and a level of disclosure that comes. I've had people, I've had the privilege of celebrating with people, um, not necessarily crying with them, because you don't want to be breaking down too, but people have cried, and there's because finance is such an intimate part of one's being, and sometimes you're speaking to people at really vulnerable points in life, and so I think people tend to feel safe with me. Yeah. But there's the 10% of interactions where it's like, who does she think she is?
Right.
How dare she challenge me in this way? It's not often, but every time it's happened, like it's vividly coming back to mind now, and I'm like, oh gosh, that was painful.
Goodness.
And needless to say, those rarely become clients, because being a financial advisor is a two-way street. And when I identify that someone is not truly comfortable and trusting of me, and it's more a question of challenge and competition and like questioning, then I just say no. There's a healthy challenge, but there's a challenge that's almost um, um, I don't want to say toxic. They're not doing it because they're trying to draw out their true objectives. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm having a flashback.
Oh God, and I'm sorry to taking you to that place, but
No,
I
no,
think
it's fine.
you
It's fine,
speak
but
of the reality of life, and again the nuance within it. That broadly, if we go Pareto's law, 80-20, you've got better than that. You've got 90-10, but in those moments, particularly because they come infrequently, I'm really curious as to not just everything went well and brilliant, but how do you hold yourself and remain rooted prior to deciding that this is not the one? Because I guess then it wouldn't just be one thing and then you go, okay, no, we can't be in partnership, but how do you keep yourself sort of rooted and able to go another day to the point where you're like, actually this won't work?
Yeah. So I'm a pretty calm person by nature, and I think one of the key things is understanding your temperament, understanding your personality, both um, financially, spiritually. So by nature, I was gifted with a calm temperament, and that was cultivated by my experiences in life. And quotes that always go through my head: this person is not deliberately trying to frustrate you; they are just expressing their perspective. you know. And if they are deliberately trying to frustrate you, don't give them the power that they're trying to have over you, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what goes through my mind. And when it happens real time, it's much harder because you almost like you have to breathe, count 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm the kind of person who returns fire for fire by nature. I'll try and do fire. Here's a bit of water to cool down, you know. And
Got
my
you.
voice is naturally calming anyway,
Yeah,
and I know how to deploy it to that effect.
sure.
But you know, I think when buttons have been pushed deliberately, sometimes it's by email. Email is harder, is easier because you can breathe, you can type, I'm like, type out your response, but don't send. Take a
Sure.
2 minute break, get that tea, drink a sip, come back and read it with fresh eyes and be like, okay, delete, 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 delete. Okay,
Yeah.
tone it down. And that has saved me hundreds of times.
Mm,
You know, not necessarily with clients, sometimes with colleagues internally, I'll just read an email and just think, you just woke up on the wrong side of bed and you decided you were going to gun for me today. I'm not going to gun back. You know, I'm going to kill this with kindness.
yeah.
So,
Oh, I love that. Killing it with kindness is powerful. And you know, it comes up in my work so frequently. We all have these lingering, enduring triggers, let's call it that. You know, small t, big T, we've got these triggers. And no one is actually, well, some people are, but no one's actually fully crazy, to your point. And I think what you just elaborated on is the difference between reaction and response.
yeah.
I feel as though a certain level of self-mastery and self-regulation allows you to do the 4, 3, 2, 1, and then consider, we did economics, so the opportunity cost of the different routes that you could take. And when you can be strategic by building that buffer between the trigger that's hit you, which is like, oh, in your case, I don't think this person is treating me with the respect that I deserve, or the way that I'm showing up in our partnership, relationship, whatever they may be. Building that buffer really allows you to select the appropriate response rather than reaction. And what I love these days more than anything is that not every provocation requires my energy and my response personally. Sometimes it is just that.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I saw it, I read it when I was ready to, and I'm not responding to it because there's a really powerful book. I don't know if you've read it. It's called Invisible Power.
Okay. No.
Which, so I'll trade you. So the Adra's dancing. I'll trade you for Invisible Power. I've been talking about it since I read it so much because it really goes to the heart of the fact that much of what we experience in life comes from the inside out, not the outside in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is our perception of a event or an action that determines how we feel, and that feeling, the emotion that goes with that, will trigger a certain type of response, reaction, either one, depending on how much regulation, self-regulation we can do. And ever since I read it, I was like, dang,
This is true.
yeah, because I can see this in any different way and on any given day, you know, whether you're tired or if it's the person as well. Like if it's someone you hold in high regard and have a lot of time for, there can be the benefit of the doubt. If it's someone that you do not, or you have previous history of such behavior, it already goes into that pile of, yeah, this is another deep thing that you, of course, would do. So it's just managing that way, the lens, you know, the lens with which you look at things. So thank you. We are galloping at a pace. The plane is cruising amazingly, and I'm going to stop talking and ask you more questions because it's about you. It's not about me. So are you ready for the next one?
I am ready. I'm ready.
This would be good for me to remember where we're at to because we've covered so much ground. It's brilliant. Mindset, that's it. Money mindset and behavior. So I know that personally I benefited from this. You help people build stability and make confident decisions. What are some of the biggest mindset shifts that you see people needing to make when it comes to money?
Yeah. That's a good one. So biggest mindset shifts I see. Um, I'll say there's two big ones that come to mind. Um, Removing the fear, right? And
Mm,
when I say removing the fear, it could be fear of investing. It's like,
mhm,
I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know where to start. I don't really know if this is right. So that facet, helping to like educate and remove the fear and
mm,
make it a habit, make it a system, make it a discipline, take out the emotion. So removing the fear, and building the dream. Yeah.
mhm,
So reminder of the goals. What is the purpose of this money ultimately?
mhm.
Why are we building this up? And so building the dream is to, okay, this is what is possible. Um, and so one of the things I always enjoy is when you sit down with clients and you help them remove not just the fear of investing, but remove the fear of like not enough. You
Mhm.
know, when you sit down and you say, okay, these are your figures. This is what we have. This is where we want to get to. This is the gap, right? And actually, if we do ABCD, this gap will be gone and you can breathe. But what's always funny is also when you sit down with individuals and you say, actually, you're done. You could stop working tomorrow if you wanted to. And when the enlightenment hits, the epiphany, you think, yeah, you're just working for fun now because you love what you do. And the number of
Mm,
people who I sit with who have multiple zeros when you add in their assets and their incomes, and they have, six figures, and they'll think, oh, I don't have enough, you know, and you can demonstrate that actually you do is a lot.
yeah.
um, but the other end, especially in this country at this time where there's cost of living crisis, inflation, etc., where it's like, actually, yes, there's a shortfall, but this is what we need to do to close it. This is what you need to be aiming for. This is what you need to ask for in your next salary, you know, and ask for it with boldness because this is the metric across your field. Speak to a recruiter because you can command this. So that's
Mm,
from the career space. So those are, I'd say, two big mindsets that need to shift.
yeah.
Um, there's a couple of others I could highlight from a money mindset perspective. Um,
Please.
Yeah, I'd say time value of money. We're all present. A lot of people are present value focused, like the now, the now, the now. One of the exercises I try to help people think about is where will I be 20, 30, 40 years from today? Where would I like to be? And so removing the solely present value focused and think about the long term, your future self and rewarding your future self. Um, So that is a key mind set shift, going beyond day to day survival to like casting vision. Yeah, so
Mm,
that's still built into building the dream. So when I put the synopsis, I'm like, remove the fear, build the dream, is key.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so
that's powerful.
yeah,
That's powerful. And do you know, it ties back to something you said earlier on, which is inherent in many of us. That many of us don't want to be a novice. And if we are looking at our environments, which are so powerful and shaping the way that we begin thinking about the world, not necessarily where we end up, but the environments we were raised in. I'd love to do a survey on how many people are raised in families where money, wealth is actually discussed and explained. My assumption is it wouldn't be many, and therefore it stands to reason that we wouldn't necessarily be equipped with a high degree of sophistication or understanding of the topic. And so where we won't, if you couple that with not wanting to be a novice, it comes up for me again in work where we will avoid at all costs anything that makes us feel incompetent. And once you do the things you said, build the dream, but also don't let the fear hold you back. You can find so many sources of inspiration from Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, Charlie Munger. And I'm not saying that what worked for them then will work for you now, but I feel for me, it really helps to sort of demystify the whole idea of money rather than go, oh God, I don't want to know about it. I mean, we've been talking I now need to know about it. And it's great to have someone like you on side, just to, hold up a little mirror every now and then, say, Kofi, like, whatever do we need to be, and I have to be honest and sometimes uncomfortable. But if you look further out rather than think today, you I really do think you can get to that place of independence where you can choose what you do, who you do it, how often you do it, when you do it, even, and so yeah, what good stuff. So we're going to get back on track, but I just wanted to, I love what you just said there, and I just wanted to join you on that. And something else you said was about the emotional side. And for me, I definitely see that financial well-being is often tied to emotional well-being. So when I work with clients, I do an assessment holistically, understanding that an impediment in one area of your life, finances being one of the ones that I assess, will impact the way that you can show up in other areas. So if your money's not good, the amount of pressure and stress that you feel will impact your professional and personal relationships, and in some cases your health, right? So for you, knowing that you help people in probably one of the two most important ways, money and their health, what practices help you stay grounded yourself, like personally, in what is a fast-paced, high pressure, highly regulated space with new things coming up all the time? Yeah, what practices do you use to just stay calm and keep carried on?
Prayer still, but also where it's like there's two things. It's like a proverb that comes to mind. Haraka haraka haina baraka, which is a Swahili proverb. Hurry, hurry has no blessings, right? And one of the things that I know, having a sense of urgency versus hurrying are not the same thing. So I try not to rush myself, because it's so easy to rush and make a misstep, right? And so when it comes to like my day-to-day, there's a constant sense that there's a lot of catching up to do. Like, oh my goodness, I'm behind on this task and that task. So I've prepared myself not to hurry, and I do use my calendar a lot. I use time blocking a lot. So I have buckets for tasks and times to think, you know what, I can't even let this stress me now. I'm going to look at it later. I have a time block for tasks. And I am an early riser. So I'm one of those people who, I'd say since 2018, when I had my last child, I, during the pregnancy, developed a habit of waking up at 5 a.m, not consciously, it just stuck. Even on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I'm still up at that time anyway. Now, I'm not advocating that, because it's not for everybody. You have to know your own body clock. But 100%. I think that's one of the things. I get up, I'll have my cup of water, look at my YouVersion app, remember that there's more to life than the present moment. There's eternity at stake. But also, I I'm going to make a confession. I used to love reading. I love reading, but I'm a compulsive reader. So I don't read as much fiction anymore. I focus more on nonfiction. So I'll read something inspiring. I try to stay away from my phone for the first hour of the day. Beyond setting my alarm and looking at the YouVersion app, I try not to get into Instagram or WhatsApp, and just to take some good traditional pen and paper, write out my thoughts. Go to my computer. So I still do engage in my computer, and I go to my Outlook to see the tasks and things for the day. So that helps. Those are some practical things that I've put. I'm not gonna say meditation and deep breathing. I would love to say that. That's one of my habits that I'd like to start building on. But for me, these are things just like wake up, drink. I find it so calming, getting my cup of water and just drink my glass of water. Sometimes boil the kettle, put, the hot water, add a bit of lemon. I don't know. I love it. I just do.
Yeah.
It's such a,
This is
and
this is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant because if you had told me that a former investment banking intern would start their day like this, I would have gone, no, it's going to be a Red Bull, it's going to be go-go, it's going to be all, but it just seems so centering and grounding and brilliant tips. I think I'm going to make a personal commitment and do similar when it comes to my phone because I've come to realize that it's not helpful. So I have timers for various social media things, but you could just add more time. But and I think that's probably one of the rate limiting factors in my personal progress. And it's just sort of it can be a time drain. I could say I want to see what my friends are doing and check up on them, but to be fair, it is a distraction. So I'm definitely going to borrow that and maybe trade you for meditation, which I was doing, and I've gone back to it. Starting from 5 minutes, I'm now up to 7 minutes. So maybe starting small, it could weave its way back into your life in good time. But you're doing some great things, so thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Mimi. I've only got a couple more questions, and I think we're doing really well to try and keep this on some track, despite my best efforts to derail it.
Sorry, guilty of this.
No, that's me. You've said what you said, and I've just been like, oh, right on, sister. I'm loving this. So here we are. I suppose it's advice for those that might want to pursue this line. And everything is not for everybody. Like you said, waking up at 5 a.m. like we do is not going to. You've got to know yourself. But if someone's listening to this and thinking, oh, actually, maybe this could be for me. And I talk broadly, women as well as women of color, because I still don't think there are enough women in leadership within the space. What advice could you give to someone looking to start their journey
in this field?
Yeah.
Young. Well, it's such a different landscape now, truth be told. So different. The advent of AI has its pros and cons, right? So coming in an entry level, things that would take analysts hours to pour over now, AI is doing in minutes, seconds. And so that's thinking about the investment banking world. Things that are hard to replicate, things that are hard to replace. Soft skills are going to take on more importance, I think. So I'd say one of the key success factors is your ability to build relationships, and network. That is something that will put you in good state in any career that you choose, whether you end up in a career in financial services or in the creative sector. That is something that is like currency. What is it? The water no get enemy, right? The Fela song. So being able to, and it doesn't mean like you have to be best buddies and super friendly. No, being able to see the value in others and make connections, like the way we connected several almost a year ago now at a BWAM, and it's like then that conversation followed into action, followed into further connections, and so I think the ability to connect, and it doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert and go networking, but being able to connect and follow up, follow through. You reached out if you hadn't, and then I followed up with you, and now here we are in a podcast.
Yeah. Who would have thought it, right?
And especially in this current age where everything is so digital, and so it's an amazing opportunity. There's things that one can do in minutes that literally would take months in the past, and so I'm really watching where human productivity is going to go in this space. Some people are very dystopian about it. I'm more hopeful, and the analogy I use is I like the fact that I can take my money from my ATM and move on. I don't want to be standing in the queue, long bank queue, to go and get my cash. So that
Yeah.
productivity costs a couple of tellers their day-to-day job, but it enhanced time. And with retraining, people are able to pivot into other valuable areas of the economy.
Yeah.
So I'm one for let's maximize the tools at hand, but there's certain qualities that are irrespective of time, age, are valuable skills to have.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that for me is the key, being able to build relationships and follow through and connect to people.
Yeah, that speaks to me a great deal. And there's so many phrases, people by people, etc., that you'll hear. And yeah, you're right. Tracing back the origins of us meeting and conversation,
Yeah,
it's I think being comfortable in one's own skin, number one, and authentic in how we show up is a second. Because I remember the day that we met, I wasn't all singing or dancing covered. I was just sat there sipping a glass of wine, just minding my own business, taking in everything, and you just appeared, and here we are. And it was a conversation there was no angle, there was no ask, there was just connection. And I think that I'd love to agree with you that the future belongs to those that can retain the things that technology cannot give us, which is true connection. True
yeah,
connection.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
if anything, it's me going off on a tangent. We become more connected, but yet more disconnected as a result of technology. So anything that brings us back to what we all desire, to be part of something and to belong
yeah.
to something, to be affirmed and valued by others. Not
Yes.
people pleasing, but do you know what I mean? Like being part
Yeah,
of a community, got to
yeah,
share. I think would be great. So thank you. My last question
yeah,
for you is just a practical takeaway for anyone listening that wants to, beyond the personal development stuff that you share, which I think has been powerful, wants to take one meaningful step, just one meaningful step towards financial clarity or empowerment. What would you encourage them to do as the first thing, just off the
yeah.
bat?
Beyond speaking to someone like myself, I would say um, it's the first thing that came to mind is understanding you're enough.
Mm,
And that is a pun intended, right? So understanding you are enough because um anyway, I'll say it the way I said it the first time. Understanding you're enough. So YOUR, but also YOU apostrophe RE. Now, what do I
mm,
mean by that? Your enough is what is enough for you. Is going to be different from what is enough for someone else.
of course.
Um, and so someone might be comfortable on £2,000 a month based on where they live, based on who their dependents are. Someone else, 20,000. But understand what your enough is. Sit down and really ask, and not from like a understand your context, understand your dependence, understand the economics of the country that you live in, the society that you live in, and
Mm,
that will vary from nation to nation, person to person. But understanding what your enough number is.
yeah.
And the reason I add on to it, understanding you are enough, is because greed is real and can overtake. And some people say greed is good. But understanding that you are enough, the fact that you are existing, breathing, cognizant, these are blessings. And you don't have to compare yourself to anyone. You can admire, but never feel that you are less than, and it brings back to the point I made at the beginning where I was doubting myself as an initial person starting my career. Everybody's journey is different. When I map
100%.
when I map out financial plans for clients, we look at the trajectory, and what will bring you joy and fulfillment and satisfaction is very different from what will bring someone else joy and fulfillment and satisfaction. I find it hard to relate to like unlimited, greed, but there are individuals like that out there, and they serve their purpose in society. But for
Cool.
most people, it's like actually a home, shelter, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, understanding what
Yeah.
your needs are, what your purpose is, tailoring your life in accordance with that is key.
Yeah.
And so the first simple thing I would ask someone to do is try and understand your enough and say, okay, this is my reality today. This is what I need. This is what I would like to be at. And this is why I would like to be there, because of ABCD, you know. So I don't know if that's more than one thing, but write, sit down and write down. Don't hide from your numbers. Sit down, write down your budget as to what you need currently, and then what you want and would like, and then
Yeah.
and then drill down and work towards that if it's not where it needs to be.
No, I think
Yeah,
it's a really, really useful aid memoir for so many perspectives, but for brevity, I'll keep it short. I think one is knowing what is right for you. So authentically, honestly, truly, not keeping up with the Joneses, but for you.
yeah,
And the second is the backstop where you stop the goalpost from moving, because I see it and I've lived it personally, where you get paid a higher salary, but then you spend more, you leverage more, you do it. So the goalposts keep on moving,
yeah,
and then you're in a pickle. And I feel that, like with any journey that you're going to go on, whether that be spiritual, financial, physical, what have you, starting with the map open and saying, right, I'm here, point A, I'd like to get to point B, eventually point D, and then figuring out the steps, speaking to someone like yourself, perhaps educating themselves with one or two books, or whatever you may do. If you don't know where you're going, how do we ever get there? So that is a really powerful close. And I really want to thank you. I want to thank you because I think that your journey is a really powerful reminder of clarity, building and holding on to confidence, and purpose. They aren't things that we always just stumble upon, you know, and I think it's indicative of who you are, that you've been able to build on those things one decision at a time. You know, we talked about the coloring and filling it in, doing the outline and filling in. And so I'm really hoping for anyone that's listened today that it may have sparked something in them beyond all the things it sparked in me. So they can take a step to reflect on what they might do to move towards greater financial well-being, but also their personal North Star, because this has been like, it's been spiritual, it's been personal development, it's also been financial. So yeah, let's keep moving with intention. And I just thank you for saying yes and bringing your magic to it. Thank you, Mimi.
Well, thank you for inviting me and for the privilege. I do feel really privileged and blessed to reflect in this way. So thank you, Kofi.
Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I think, yeah, you brought everything and more that I was hoping for, and others will for sure benefit from it. And I'll be speaking to you very soon, no doubt, no doubt.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.